Hi everyone, my name is Justin Odisho, and in this video I'm going to show you how to make an audio reacting particle card dance effect in Adobe After Effects. So if you're new to the channel, consider subscribing. I try to make new videos every day. If you guys enjoy these effects, then make sure you leave a like on the video below. So I've got two things open in my project media bin. I've got my example clip that I want to use. This is going to work best with footage with a very dark background and a clear subject. So if you're shooting this footage on purpose, maybe stand in front of a dark background or use a green screen so you can cut yourself out. But whatever clip you're using, the other thing I have in the project media bin is the audio track that I want it to react to. So here I'm just using an example song. Now, whenever you want to create a new composition, you can actually click and drag your clips right onto the timeline, and it'll create a new composition based on the clip size and length. Or you can always go to composition, new composition, and create one of whatever dimensions and clip duration that you needed. So I'm just going to create a 30-second clip here for me to show you guys and work with, and I'll drag my ballet clip onto the timeline. Now the next thing I'm going to do is also drag my song onto the timeline at whatever part that I want it to react to. So now to start building the actual effect, let's go to the effects panel and let's search for one called Card Dance. You should find it in the simulation folder. So I'll click and drag that onto my video clip layer, and now we have a few things we can adjust. Now at first it's not going to look like anything happened, so in order to get our effect to start appearing, we want to set a few things. So for the gradient layer, we want to choose the same clip, so ballet.mp4, and under the Z position, we want to adjust the source to be the intensity 1. What this does is it takes the brighter portions of the clip and it brings them closer to the camera, and it takes the darker portions of the clip and it brings them further back. So you can adjust the offset up a tiny bit just to fill in some of the blank spaces that appear on the edges. But you can see if I adjust the multiplier, it gets stronger or weaker depending on the brightness of the clip. But at the moment, these squares are way too big, so we can adjust the rows and the columns. So basically, if you increase the rows and the columns to about 300 or so, and you can play around with it and experiment to your liking, you start to get these squares that almost turn your subject into 3D particles. So you can make them larger for more fine particles, or if you like the blocky look, you can keep them a little bit closer together, and you can make them as square or rectangular as you choose. So I'm using about 340 to 250. That's not a perfect ratio for anything really. It's just a decent size for this example. Another thing you can do to adjust it to your taste is adjust the X, Y, and Z rotation. So by adjusting the offset on these rotations of each cube, you can get things to appear a bit more to your taste. So I can adjust the Y offset, and it just rotates these cubes away from each other a bit, which creates a little bit more separation. Another thing you can also do is adjust the lighting. So if you want to add a bit more brightness to it, you can increase the light intensity. That can pick up some of that brightness that you might lose when you add the rotation. So I'm going to increase it just a tiny bit. Now it's already looking like a bit of a hologram or glowing effect. Let me move to another frame here so you guys can see. Looks really cool here actually. But now the next step is, how do we get this separation to only happen in reaction to some music tracks? And I actually have a full separate tutorial that covers how to make things react to audio in After Effects if you want a full separate walkthrough, but I'm going to do it in this tutorial as well. On your music track, you want to right click and go to Keyframe Assistant, Convert Audio to Keyframes. What this is going to do is going to create a new layer with a whole bunch of keyframes based on how loud the music gets or how quiet it gets. So we have left, right, and both channels. In this case, I only want both channels since the music track doesn't have any unique elements going on in the left or right ear, but you can play around with that for different tracks. So I'm going to keep just the both elements. I deleted the other two, and I'm also going to hit that drop down menu, and under this slider expression here, I'm going to hold Alt and click it to create an expression. So this is the default one. It should say Effect Both Channels 1, but I'm going to set it to ease, parentheses, value, comma, 0, 0, 0, 0. So what this expression says is basically ease between each keyframe, and at the values of these first two spots, so from 0 to, let's say, 100, we're going to make the effect go from 0 to 100. So these two parameters are where we're going to have all the control for the power of our effect. So I actually don't want to do 0 to 100 for both, and I'm going to tell you why. if you actually click on this graph editor, you can see exactly what your music track looks like. So you see it's all measured in units, and this point in the track is about 8 units, where these beats on the track are about 70 units. So this is actually a track with some pretty clear beats to it. So if I only wanted the effect to happen at these peaks, which are above a certain point, I could tell Premiere to only consider anything past 20 units to be a bump on the music. So let's go back. I'll close the graph here. So if we go back to this adjustment, you could say from 20 to 100, make the effect go from 0 to 100. And now I also don't want the effect to go all the way to 100 magnitude, and I'll show you why as well. So if we go back to our ballet clip, the effect that we're going to link to the audio keyframes is this Z position multiplier. So you see right now it looks really nice at 1. If we were to take that up to 100, it just gets really crazy and split out. It looks cool, but it gets really exploded. So you want to play around with this and say, how much would I like it to explode out of the frame for each beat of the keyframe? So in my case, to keep it subtle, let's say I really only want it to explode about 5. So for this expression, we're going to go from 0 to 5. And you could also use negative numbers. You could make it go from -5 to 5. But don't let this confuse you. It's just 2 sets of digits that let you control 2 different limits for how strong you want things to be. But to actually get this effect to start reacting to those audio keyframes, let's go to our ballet clip, go to that Z position multiplier, which is the key effect that we want to adjust here that's going to make the magic happen. And on the keyframe, we're going to hold Alt and Option and click it. And that's going to give us that red expression keyframe. And this is going to allow us to take this little spiral pick whip and drag it up until we can connect it to our other little animated keyframe on the slider. So I'll connect those 2 points, and now this is going to start listening to the expression that we put in the audio amplitude. So when I play back this part, you see as the audio bumps, it creates a ripple. But I think I've set the limit too high because it's only bumping very quickly. So what I can do is go back to my audio amplitude, and you'll probably have to do this as well, and highlight that slider and look at the graph one more time and see, okay, where is my audio really at? So it looks like all the action is happening right around 15 units all the way up to 70. So I'm going to go back and adjust my slider expression to take that into account. So I'll lower the bottom threshold to, let's just say 10 to 80. So now it's going to consider 10 to be the floor, to be 0, and 80 to be 5. And so I'll also increase from 5 to, let's say, 8. So now let's check that out and see how it looks. If you get really warbly or distorted audio, that means it's buffering. You want to wait for that green line to appear. So playing that back, you can see I've created a much smoother and better range for myself. So you might have to go back and play around with your limits and threshold and strength of the effect to get it to look good for your audio clip. Now, one final thing we can do to get that cool color, like you saw in the beginning example, is add a new adjustment layer over top. So I'll highlight my composition. I'll go to Layer, New Adjustment Layer, and we can use some color correction on this layer to get some cool abstract color. So there's a few different ones you can use. You can use Tint, which is under the color correction. So I can drag that onto the adjustment layer. It will affect everything underneath, and I can map from black to white if I want a black to white effect, or I can make the blacks like a really dark blue and make the highlights a bright red. And that's a cool color combination if you wanted it. Another one you can use is the Tritone. This is just like the tint, except it gives you an option to do 3 colors. So shadows, highlights, and midtones. So I can keep the highlights and shadows white and black, but I could make the midtone something like blue. That's another look you could play around with. Or you can also use one called Colorama, which is kind of like gradient map in Photoshop. You can click and drag this on the adjustment layer. It will map everything to a color wheel. So if you open up the output cycles, you have this color wheel. You can actually click and change what each color is. So I can make this blue. You can see it reflects that. And they also have a bunch of cool preset palettes for you to go through, like Deep Ocean or Fire or Golden. And this can be a really cool one as well. This Fire one is pretty interesting. You can make it loop and repeat a couple times to get some cool effects that you couldn't with the others. So you can adjust those finishing touches on the color however you like, but that's basically how you can use the card dance effect and the audio reacting expressions to create this particle dancing effect. If you guys enjoyed this video and you still want to learn a little bit more about that audio react, I have a whole separate video which I'll link in the end cards. And if you're not subscribed to the channel yet, I try to make new videos every day, so subscribe and turn on notifications if you don't want to miss those. You can follow me on Instagram and Twitter at JustinODShow if you want to reach out to me. And once again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.